This video provides a review of the steps required for the second Data Analytics project. Data Analytics Project 2 expanded our understanding of taxes by introducing factors that affect a taxpayer's filing status, expanding our tax rate schedules to accommodate these new filing statuses, filling out the individual income tax formula, since that's how tax accountants compute taxes for decision-making purposes, and formatting it so that it will be ready to be printed off and handed to a client. Additionally, we incorporated the standard deductions by filing status, additional standard deductions, and exemptions. Finally, we started getting ready for the inclusion of income that won't be taxed at ordinary rates, such as our long-term capital gains and qualified dividend income, by importing the capital gains tax rate table. Let's walk through each of these steps. We began the second data analytics project by adding entry rows for the following categories that affect filing statuses. If we were a tax accountant who were preparing individual returns, we could use these questions for two reasons. First, we could build rapport with our clients when they come in as we get to know them. At the same time, if we use non-zero numbers and a conditional formula in the filing status, we can use entries in these fields to update our filing status automatically. Later on in the course, we will use non-zero values in these entry fields to update credits, such as the child tax credit. As I scroll up, you can see that I removed the blue shading from the filing status. That's because I created a large conditional formula that will automatically update this filing status based on non-zero entries in these fields. Let me expand this field so that you can see it a little bit better as it changes. If I enter a 1 into the spouse as of 12/31/2020 X, it's going to select a married filing separate status. That's because I have not selected the option that they would want to file jointly with their spouse. When I do that, the filing status automatically changes to married filing joint. If my client weren't married, but indicated that they had a deceased spouse and they met all of the conditions for a qualifying widower, meaning that the spouse did not die this tax year, but died in a prior tax year, that they were within the 2-year limit after the year of death, and that they provided support and maintained a home for the dependent child, then I would enter a 1 here and my filing status would update to qualifying widower. If the taxpayer was not a qualifying widower and was not married, then I would ask whether they had dependents, whether that be a child or a qualifying relative. You can see that my filing status will change to head of household. If there are no non-zero entries, then the default filing status for the taxpayer is single. You may have noticed that as I was changing the values in these fields, my standard deduction, federal tax liabilities, and all of my tax rates changed automatically. In order to accomplish this, I used a VLOOKUP formula that searches for the term head of household in a table on another sheet. In this case, I can reference the table that contains the standard deductions on the standard deduction and exemption table. It will search for the head of household filing status within these cells, and once it finds it, it will return the value that's reported in column C. There are a few important things to note about a VLOOKUP formula. First, a VLOOKUP formula can only find the value in the first column of the table that you're going to be searching for the value and pulling the result. Second, that table must be sorted alphabetically in order for the VLOOKUP formula to work appropriately. If you have everything configured correctly and every spelling of the filing status the same, then it should automatically pull the standard deduction amount for you. There were a few more steps for it to get to automate the process of pulling the appropriate federal tax liability based on filing status. First, we had to expand our tax rate schedule table so that it included the tax rate schedules for all of the other filing statuses. For my spreadsheet, I made sure that it would compute the federal tax liability regardless of the filing status, as well as identify the marginal tax rate and the highest statutory tax rate. Once I had created tables that would compute those items for me, I then created a reference table at the bottom of this sheet. The reference table included all of the values that I would want to pull for the various input-output summary tabs. I even referenced fields here from other tables that would be relevant. Once I had created the table at the bottom, I could then use a VLOOKUP formula for the federal tax liability, the highest statutory tax rate, and the marginal tax rate, and pull all of the respective information from the table that's at the bottom of my tax rate schedule tab. I could leave the average tax rate and effective tax rate alone since they're computed based on the information reported on the Input-Output Summary tab. You also created an individual income tax formula tab that could be printed and delivered to a client. I provided you with some specific guidance on how to set this table up so that it could be formatted to be viewed in either Excel or via a printed sheet. You were asked to center fields, change column widths, and set the printing area so that it would print on one page. Finally, you were asked to center the page. Since there were few people that used the quick menu to do this, let me demonstrate the process. You would go to the Page Layout tab, and within the Page Layout tab, the third quick menu is for Scale to Fit. Expand this menu. You would select the option to fit it to 1 page wide by 1 page tall. While this fits the individual income tax formula to 1 page, it doesn't center it. To do that, you can go to the Margins tab and select the options to center on the page both horizontally and vertically. You should have also imported the capital gains tax rate schedule, but I just asked you to import it so that we're getting ready for future things. The final sheet that you had to manipulate was to bring in the personal monthly budget. Recall you can do this by right-clicking, selecting the Move or Copy option, select the option to create a copy, and then select the workbook that you'd like to import that personal monthly budget into. You had to fill out the personal monthly budget for Amani. You could automatically link the income to the Input-Output Summary tab. Let me go back, and I think for this particular instruction, you were told that Amani had $64,800 worth of income, and he was still a single taxpayer. Now that I have those set, we can go back to the personal monthly budget so you can see how this works. I got the income by referencing the Input-Output Summary tab and dividing it by 12, since this is a monthly budget. I set the actual monthly budget equal to the projected monthly budget. Several of the expenses required you to do some manipulation to get the appropriate cost. For example, the monthly rent was $1,900, but since Amani was going to split this with one other friend, he would only have to pay $950. You could then add in the cell phone bill, the utilities on any particular line, combine the cable and the internet, and then maybe take the household supplies here. For the insurance, most of the insurance numbers were provided on an annual basis, so you would just have to divide that number by 12 to figure out what the projected and actual costs would be per month. Same thing with the car maintenance, which was provided using an annual number. We see the same process for the home insurance, the health insurance, and then also the dental and vision insurance that Amani was going to secure upon employment. We were provided with monthly numbers for the groceries and the dining out. We could combine the medical expenses, both from a monthly perspective for the prescription costs, as well as the annual expenses, and then divide the annual expenses by 12 to get the projected medical expense cost. We then knew that Amani was going to spend $25 per month on getting his hair cut, $45 on clothes and shoes, and $45 on a monthly gym membership. He also contributed $65 to a charity and would spend $120 on entertainment. The last piece of the budget would be to account for the taxes. For right now, we only know about the federal income tax, so you could again reference the Input-Output Summary tab to find the total bill, and then divide that amount by 12. The monthly budget is set up to compute the total projected and actual costs, and at the top, you find out that Amani would have a monthly surplus of $1,479.65. I hope that once again, the review of this data analytics project not only helped you as you prepare to take the first exam and understand things like filing status and how that affects the tax liability and standard deduction, but also helped you understand the process that you've been engaged in as you're completing these data analytics projects.